All right, ready to dive into something delicious today. We're talking wine. Specifically, what happens to a bottle of wine as it ages? Imagine you're at a party and someone's like, oh, this Cabernet is amazing. It's aged for 10 years. You'll be able to impress them with the science behind why.
It's a fascinating process, isn't it? It's not just about letting wine sit there. There's some really interesting chemistry happening inside that bottle.
Okay, so break it down for me. What are the top things people should know about the chemistry of wine aging? What transforms that young wine into something complex and delicious?
Well, the first thing to remember is that it's all about slow chemical reactions.
Slow and steady wins the race, huh?
Exactly. We're talking years, not days, for these changes to happen. These slow reactions are what give aged wine those really unique characteristics.
Okay, so it's like a slow-cooked stew. The flavors deepen and meld over time. Makes sense. What else is going on in there chemically?
One of the most important reactions is esterification.
Oh, yeah, esters. I know those are important for aroma, but how does it work?
So basically, the acids and alcohols that are already in the wine, they react with each other to form these compounds called esters.
And those esters create the aromas we associate with wine.
Exactly. Different esters create all sorts of different flavors. Like, think about those fruity and floral notes you love in wine. That's esters at work.
Ah, I see. So as the wine ages, different esters form, adding layers of complexity. Like a young wine might have simple cherry notes, but after a few years in the bottle, you get hints of blackberry or plum, maybe even dried fruit.
Exactly. It's all about those slow, subtle changes over time. Now, speaking of changes, there's another process that's crucial to wine aging:
Hit me.
oxidation.
Oh, like when a cut apple turns brown.
Exactly the same process, but don't worry, in wine it's much slower and more controlled.
Hold on, though. How does oxygen even get into a sealed bottle?
Tiny amounts can actually seep in through the cork over time. And sometimes winemakers even introduce a little oxygen during the winemaking process.
So a little bit of oxygen's a good thing.
In the right amounts, yeah, it can help soften those tannins.
Remind me about tannins.
Those are the bitter compounds that you find in young red wines, especially.
Oh, right. Okay, so oxidation helps soften the tannins and
It also helps develop some of those other flavors you find in aged wines, those savory, nutty, even earthy notes.
okay, so like a Cabernet might start off super tannic and taste mostly of blackcurrant, but over time it becomes smoother, less astringent, and develops those more complex aromas like cedar or tobacco.
You got it. That's control oxidation doing its magic, adding another dimension to the wine's flavor profile.
I'm loving this chemistry lesson. Okay, so we've got exterification, creating the fruity complexity, oxidation, bringing in the savory notes. What else is at play here?
Well, you can't forget about those tannins. They actually go through their own transformation during aging. It's called tannin polymerization.
Polymerization. Okay, break that down for me.
So think of tannins as these individual molecules kind of floating around in the wine. In a young wine, those tannins are kind of rough on your palate.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But over time, those tannins start linking up, forming bigger chains of molecules.
They joined forces.
Exactly. Think of it like a bunch of tiny Lego bricks scattered around, each one poking you a little. But as they polymerize, they link up to form bigger, smoother structures.
So the tannins basically mellow out over time, making the wine feel smoother in your mouth.
Precisely. And this polymerization also changes how the tannins interact with other compounds in the wine, further evolving the flavor.
Wow, we're really getting down to the molecular level here. I love it. What's the last piece of this wine aging puzzle?
This is where it gets really magical. It's the development of what's called bottle bouquet.
Bottle bouquet. Ooh, that sounds fancy. What is that exactly?
Think of it as the final flourish of the aging process. All those processes we've talked about, esterification, oxidation, tannin polymerization, they all come together over years to create this incredibly complex, layered aroma.
I need some examples. What kind of aromas are we talking about?
Oh, it can range from things like mushroom and leather to forest floor, tobacco, even a hint of truffles in some cases. It really depends on the specific wine and how it's been aged.
I can see why some people find aged wine so intriguing, while others might find those earthy notes a bit off-putting.
Definitely a matter of personal preference, but those unique aromas are the hallmark of a well-aged wine.
Okay, so to recap, we've got those slow chemical reactions happening over time, esterification giving us those fruity notes, oxidation bringing in the savory elements, tannin polymerization smoothing things out, and finally bottle bouquet adding those complex aromas. That's a lot going on in that bottle.
It's like a perfectly choreographed dance of molecules. And remember, all these processes are happening simultaneously and influencing each other. It's what makes wine aging so fascinating.
I'm amazed by how much chemistry is behind the scenes of something we just enjoy drinking.
Right, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of nuance to explore when it comes to wine aging.
Well, I'm definitely ready to dive deeper. This is making me think about that glass of wine in a whole new way.
That's the beauty of understanding the chemistry, right? It adds another layer of appreciation for what you're tasting.
Okay, I'm hooked. Now, I have a question.
So we've talked about those key processes, but, not every wine is meant to be aged, right?
That's so true. You never really see an aged Pinot Grigio, but Cabernet or Bordeaux, those benefit from some time. So what's the deciding factor?
It really comes down to the grapes themselves. Different grapes have different chemical makeups, and that affects how well they age.
So like some grapes are destined to age while others are best enjoyed young.
Exactly. Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance, is a grape that's naturally high in tannins, and tannins, as we know, play a big part in this whole aging thing.
Because those tannins need time to soften up and polymerize, right?
Precisely. And those tannins are like the backbone of the wine, giving it structure. Plus, they act as natural antioxidants, helping to, preserve the wine.
Okay, so high tannins usually mean a red wine has good aging potential. What about white wines?
Well, white wines generally have lower tannin levels, which is why we often drink them young and fresh. But of course, there are always exceptions.
Okay, I was hoping you'd say that. Which white wines can age well?
Think about Chardonnay. It can develop some really cool flavors as it ages. You know, that buttery, nutty quality that some Chardonnay lovers look for?
Oh, I love a good aged Chardonnay. What causes that buttery flavor?
It comes from a specific type of fermentation called malolactic fermentation. And this brings up another important point. The choices a winemaker makes can really impact how a wine ages.
So it's not just about the grape itself, it's also about how the winemaker handles it.
Absolutely. Everything from the type of yeast they use to the temperature during fermentation, even the type of barrels if the wine is aged in oak, it all plays a role.
This reminds me that aging wine is a long game, and it's about setting yourself up for success from the very beginning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of setting yourself up for success, let's talk about storage, because even the Moët age-worthy wine can be ruined if it's not stored properly.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of storage. What are the ideal conditions for aging wine?
Consistency is key. You want a cool, dark place where the temperature stays stable, ideally around 55 degrees Fahrenheit and with moderate humidity.
So basically, my kitchen counter is not the best spot for my wine collection.
Probably not the best. Too much light and temperature swings can really mess with those chemical reactions. And don't forget about the position of the bottles.
Right, I've heard that matters. Should the bottles be lying down or standing up?
If you're aging wine for the long haul, always store the bottles on their sides. That way the cork stays in contact with the wine, keeping it moist and preventing too much oxygen from getting in.
So a happy cork equals happy wine. It sounds like having a dedicated wine storage solution is really important if you're serious about aging.
Absolutely. Whether it's a temperature-controlled wine fridge or a full-blown cellar, that consistent environment is crucial. Now, I know you're probably wondering,
How do I know when a wine is finally ready to drink?
the million-dollar question. And unfortunately, there's no simple answer. It really depends on the wine itself, the vintage, and, even personal preference.
Of course, it wouldn't be wine without a little mystery involved. But are there any general guidelines?
Definitely. The best thing you can do is research, look at vintage charts, talk to wine experts. Don't be afraid to ask for recommendations or try different things. It's all about exploring and discovering what you enjoy.
That's what I love about wine. It's a journey of discovery. And the more you understand the science behind it, the more you can appreciate what's happening in that bottle.
Exactly. Each bottle has a story, and understanding the science makes those stories even richer. But, there's another aspect we haven't touched on yet.
Ooh, okay, I'm all ears. What else is there to uncover?
We've talked about what happens inside the bottle, but what about the world outside? The environment where those grapes are grown. That plays a huge role in how well a wine will age, too.
So it's not just about the grape, it's also about where it comes from.
Bingo. It's the concept of terroir, that idea that the environment where the grapes are grown gives the wine its unique personality.
Okay, so I understand how soil, climate even, like the angle of a hillside, can affect the flavor of grapes. But how does that impact aging?
Well, let's take a wine grown in a cooler climate, for instance. The grapes have longer to ripen, which usually means they'll have higher acidity.
And we know that acidity is a good thing for longevity.
Right, you got it. Those bright acids act as a natural preservative and help balance the wine's structure, which gives it the potential to age beautifully.
So wines from cooler regions like Burgundy or the Loire Valley are more likely to age well.
It's a good rule of thumb, but not always a guarantee. Winemaking techniques still matter a lot. A poorly made wine, even from a great region, isn't going to age gracefully.
Makes sense. So it's all about finding that sweet spot, the perfect grape, the perfect terroir, and a skilled winemaker.
You've nailed it. That's the magic formula for creating truly exceptional wines that can age beautifully. but let's not forget about.
The people who first started aging wine, I mean, they didn't have the scientific knowledge we have today.
I know, right? It's incredible to think about. Those early winemakers had no clue about esterification or tannins, but they still somehow figured out that some wines just tasted better after some time.
It's amazing, really. It speaks to our human ingenuity, our desire to improve things, even the simple pleasures.
Totally. Winemaking is this blend of art and science and tradition, and I think that's why it's so fascinating.
You've got centuries of knowledge passed down through generations, and then now we're able to understand those age-old practices on a molecular level. It's pretty cool.
It really is. We're tasting history and science in every glass. But, we've talked a lot about the benefits of aging wine. Are there any drawbacks?
Yeah, that's a good point. It can't all be sunshine and roses, right?
Well, one thing to consider is the cost. Aging wine properly requires, like, controlled environments, sometimes special equipment, and definitely a lot of patience. All of that adds up. That's why aged wines tend to be pricier.
Right. Not everyone has a wine cellar or the budget for it.
Exactly. And then there's the risk factor. There's always a chance that a wine might not age the way you expect it to.
Even with perfect storage conditions.
Even then, sometimes a wine just doesn't develop the way you hoped it would.
So there's a bit of a gamble involved.
I guess you could say that, but I think that's part of what makes it so exciting. It's like a slow-motion treasure hunt, and the reward is an amazing bottle of wine.
Okay, you've convinced me. I want to give wine aging a try. Any advice for a beginner? Where do I even start?
Don't overthink it. Start small. Pick a couple of bottles that are known for aging well. Maybe a Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, or Syrah if you like reds. Or maybe a Chardonnay or Riesling for whites.
And then find a nice, cool, dark place to store them, right?
You got it. A wine fridge is great if you have the space. But the most important thing is patience.
Patience. Got it. So while I'm waiting for my wine to age, what can I do to, prepare for that glorious day when I finally get to open the bottle?
Now, that's a great question. You can use that time to learn more about wine aging, read up on different vintages, maybe even join a wine tasting group to share your journey with other enthusiasts. The more you learn, the more you'll appreciate the finished product.
Awesome. I love that idea. And then, when the time finally comes to open that bottle,
Savor every sip. Pay attention to the aromas, the flavors, how it feels in your mouth, and think about all those incredible transformations that have taken place over time thanks to those fascinating chemical processes we talked about.
wow, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the world of wine aging. I feel like I've learned so much, and I can't wait to put it all into practice.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, the most important thing is to enjoy the experience. Explore, experiment, and never stop learning. The world of wine is vast and full of amazing discoveries.
Cheers to that, to the science, the art, and the pure joy of wine.
Cheers.
A terre ici.